All right, welcome to Module 29. So today we're looking at basic motivational concepts, affiliation, and achievement. So we made a little bit of a jump in the book. We skipped a few. If you want to look at those previous ones, you can read them yourself, or take Psych 102 if you want to dig through them at a little deeper level. But looking at like the environmental influences and on intelligence and all those kinds of things. So anyway, jumping forward into 29, from 24 to 29. You can find it on page 348 for the starting of this specific module. You can also find the PowerPoints in D2L, the same place you find this video. And then finally, don't forget to listen for the 4 random facts. Take the quizzes that are connected to those facts, as well as the quiz that is over the readings in the book. And you should have a fairly easy time doing those things, right? It's not too brutal, hopefully. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And we'll keep on rolling. So again, Module 29, Slide 2 on the PowerPoint if you're following along. So basic motivational concepts, affiliation, and achievement, part 1. This is going to give you a quick rundown. You'll find this in the very first paragraph in the book also, or in the chapter, module, whatever, second paragraph, something like that. The first little section of some of the different concepts that have been proposed by psychologists. One is instinct theory or evolutionary theory. It's the idea that we are genetically predisposed to do certain things, right? We're going to look at these more in depth in the next slide, so I'm just going to kind of touch on them real quick. Drive reduction theory, which is the response to inner pushes and pulls. Arousal theory, which is finding the right stimulation levels. So therefore, we might look different for an introvert versus extrovert and all those kinds of things. Every individual is going to have different levels of where they feel comfortable. And then finally, Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, priority of some needs over others. And so we'll look at those again more in depth. So let's go ahead and bounce into the next slide, slide 3. Basic motivational concepts, affiliation, and achievement, part 2, instincts and evolutionary theory. So an instinct is going to be a complex behavior throughout a given species. So it's going to be consistent species-wide in every way, essentially. Okay, it doesn't matter any individual species, as long as they make it to a certain age, they will show this behavior. It's unlearned, fixed patterns. So, for example, this would be like a bird building a nest. Okay, it's an instinct. They don't have to be taught. It's not like a bird is like, here, this is how you make a nest. They just do it. Even those crazy like weaver birds in Africa that make these amazing nests that, like, they hang from a branch of a tree and they got a little hole into it and everything. It's like a gourd almost, but it's woven out of grasses and things. No one teaches them that, right? You could take a chick, you could take an egg, incubate it, hatch it out, and that little chick will make that nest when it gets old enough to look at reproducing. No teaching required. Okay. There is very few things within humans that you will find to actually be truly instinctual. Okay, so the assumptions evolutionary psychology is that genes predispose some species typical behaviors. So there's going to be some things, right? Like when we first get exposed to a breast, we begin to try to nurse as babies, as infants, right? That's going to be a instinct. It's also actually just the instinct to suck whenever anything touches their mouth as a baby. So they'll suck onto your cheek or your nose or something even. That's a natural instinct. You don't have to teach them to do that. They just do that automatically. Outside of that, the majority of what we do as humans is learned. Basically either someone is teaching it to you or we learn it from experience through conditioning. And so this one really doesn't have that much of a strong say to say. So I'm trying to think of a better way to use that, but essentially it doesn't have a lot of influence on us as humans, right? They're even to some extent, like maternal instincts and things like that have really been found to not be straight across the board across everyone. Women are typically a little bit more nurturing than men, typically, not always, but typically, due to hormone levels and things like that. But there isn't a consistent instinctual, like, this is what we do without thinking about it, right? We're taught the vast majority of everything that we do. Okay. Slide 4, basic motivational concepts, affiliation achievement, part 3, drive reduction theory. This is that physiological needs create an aroused, motivated state. It gives you an incentive to seek out and do something, right? When physiological needs increase, so does the psychological drive to reduce those needs. We want to get back to homeostasis. Homeostasis is that balance in our system. We like our system to be at a certain level. If it goes too high or too low, we don't like it. And so we do our best to try to basically adjust for that. So pushed by need to reduce drives, pulled by incentives in those cases. So an example of this, an easy example of this would be like if you get thirsty, you stand up and you go get a glass of water, or go to the refrigerator and get something out of it. But it's what motivates you to get up and go do that thing, go get that thing. If you feel hungry, you get up and go get those foods, right? So those kind of basic needs are really easily seen. You're going to see like sex drives are going to be here, right? We might not like social interaction necessarily, but because we want those needs met, we'll go out and talk to people of the opposite sex usually, in order to try to get our genes into the future. All those kinds of things are going to be drives that are going to be connected there, right? You might also be sexually attracted to the same sex, but anyway, the normal biological go-to is that we want to make babies basically, and that's what's driving behind that. So yeah, that's going to be the basic idea here, and in fact, this is true to a large extent, right? We're trying to basically keep ourselves comfortable. If you start to get too hot, you seek out shade. You're driven to basically find that thing. It gives you the incentive, right? It's uncomfortable right now, so therefore I'm incentivized to go find something to make myself more comfortable. Jump in a swimming pool or something like that, right? If it's cold, I seek out shelter for warmth, and so on and so forth. And so essentially, this is a very basic level of drives. But it really does play a big part in our day-to-day actions, in kind of our bodies and minds. Essentially, just like we like that stable state, and so that's what we're looking for. Okay. So anything that basically elevates our excitement, all those kind of things. Again, we don't want that. We have too much. We want that kind of sweet spot. Okay. Random fact number 1. From this week's list, or this lecture's list, there's a Dutch company that has started training crows to pick up cigarette butts and put them in a bin for literal peanuts as a reward. They're in the process of basically cleaning up parks and things using trained crows to do that. So there you go, cool stuff. Okay, 5, basic motivational concepts, affiliation and achievement, part 4. Arousal theory. So some motivated behavior can increase rather than decrease arousal, right? The drive reduction essentially is we're trying to reduce arousal. The hungrier you get, the more aroused you become about that, the stronger the drive is to go and get food in your belly. And so the goal is to basically bring that back down. On the other hand, arousal theory, some motivated behaviors increase, right? So human motivation aims to find optimal arousal levels, not to eliminate arousal completely. If you eliminate arousal completely, you are literally dead, right? We need a certain level of arousal to function. Each individual is going to have a certain level that they find to be the most comfortable, given all of their biology, psychology, and all those aspects. And that is going to be the point that we try to strive for to achieve, right? So people who maybe are like daredevil people, they like a more heightened arousal state. And so they'll do those crazy things like, double backflips on motorcycles and like, to achieve that heightened state because that's where they enjoy being. On the other hand, a bookworm might like to just sit and read because that's where they're comfortable, right? That's what they seek out. But in any case, we're looking for those things that will give us enough arousal, and thus will cause us to do some of those things like ride motorcycles or train horses or learn new skills and all those kinds of things. Yerkes-Dodson law states that moderate arousal leads to optimal performance. We're looking for that sweet spot. They found that when you put a person into a given circumstance, too much stress shuts you down, but not enough stress also shuts you down. There really is a spot where it engages you enough to where it sharpens your thinking and really makes you kind of put you on your toes, but at the same time isn't so much that you feel overwhelmed and shuts you down. And so that's what we're looking for essentially with this, with the arousal theory, is that point of, enough to keep us going, keep us interested in it, while not so much that it feels overwhelming, right? You sit down and do a puzzle. I don't know. A puzzle might be an idea of this, right? If it's a boring puzzle, you're not going to be really that interested in it and you're going to give up. On the other hand, if the puzzle is too hard, you're also not going to be interested in it because it just gets frustrating and you give up. Video games kind of do the same kind of thing. But you hit that sweet spot where it's challenging, but not so much that it just shuts you down. That's what we like to do. Okay. Even with looking at kids, when they're learning new things, you've gone too far when they begin to cry. All right. If you're trying to teach them something new and they burst into tears, you have aroused them too much. They have engaged at a point where they don't think they can do it anymore. On the other hand, you can see a kid when they're just like, right, when they're trying to teach them something, they're not aroused enough. There's that, we got to find that sweet spot for them. Okay. Slide 6, basic motivational concepts, affiliation and achievement, part 5. Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Maslow's interesting. So Abraham Maslow was a Jewish American, grew up in New York, and he basically grew up observing all of these different people doing what they did. And what he found is that a lot of people seemed to be motivated by things that didn't truly make them happy. And so he came up with a theory that basically some of these guys were getting stuck at certain levels on the way towards happiness, essentially, or toward getting their needs met. And so he came up with a theory in the 1940s and then truly presented it in the 1950s of his hierarchy of needs. He felt like there was certain things that needed to come before you moved up this hierarchy. So it begins at the base with physiological needs that must first be satisfied. And then before people can fulfill their higher level safety needs, right, they move up the ladder then their psychological needs are met. Once your basic survival stuff is met, then we move up into psychological, social needs. Then we move up into psychological, individual needs as we go. So you can find an image of this on page 351, and you can also find it on the next slide. So we'll slide into the next slide, slide 7. And before we do that, second random fact. The NYPD had an officer follow Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant, if you don't remember, he was a wrestler back in the 80s and 90s. He's also famous for being in The Princess Bride, or not Princess Bride. Yeah, Princess Bride. I almost said Princess Diaries. Okay, not Princess Diaries, Princess Bride. Much better movie. Anyway, they would have an officer follow him around anytime that he went out to go drinking, not because they were afraid that he was going to hurt somebody like by getting in a fight, but because they were afraid that he would get too drunk and fall on somebody and injure him that way. And so that just in case they had an officer there with him so that he can save the person who got fallen on by him. If I remember right, he weighed close to 500 pounds when he was kind of at his peak performance level. So yeah, big man. So anyway, let's see. Took a lot of alcohol to make him truly drunk. I couldn't imagine. That would not be a cheap date. So slide 7. This gives you the little hierarchy or the tower that he had. Initially, he had 5 levels. And then toward the very end of his life, and then those that followed him basically added a 6th level. Before I go into these, though, another note. He really didn't use any scientific methods to come to this. But it's still taught today because even though he didn't really have like a scientific method in exploring this, it plays out in reality. There have been some different studies done by other people that have found that, like, in fact, this does work. For example, physiological needs, it's going to be that need to satisfy hunger, thirst. It's your most basic level needs, right? If you don't believe me, let's say you have all these cares and worries, and I make it to where you can't breathe for a minute. Those things go out the window. All you care about is getting that next breath, right? Same thing if you're truly thirsty, all you can think about is getting that thirst quenched. If you're extremely hungry, all you can think about is food, right? The Nazis, interestingly enough, actually did an experiment which is awful, but during the concentration camps, they took a group of men. It was a male camp. They took a group of men, they starved them for an extra long time, and then they brought them into a small theater. And on one side of the theater, they put a naked woman. They brought a woman in and had her stripped down. On the other side of the theater, they put a sandwich or some, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was some kind of food on a plate. Afterwards, they asked the men what they noticed. Not a single one of the men noticed the naked woman. Okay. The sandwich was, or the food on the plate was all that they basically drew all of their attention to it. So that shows you kind of the hierarchy to some extent of our basic physiological needs, right? If you're well satisfied hunger wise, the naked woman would have probably drawn your eyes much more than the sandwich would have, unless it was just a ridiculously amazing sandwich. But so yeah, those basic needs, right? Once you get them met, the next level up is going to be the safety needs. This is where you need to feel that the world is relatively stable. You know where your food is coming from. You know you have access to it, water. You know you have access to a shelter. The world's going to be organized, predictable, right? You have a job that you have that's consistent. You kind of know what to expect. That's going to be that safety need. Okay. So to some extent, you also need to know that you have all this stuff and that, you know, it's unlikely that someone's going to come in and just take it all from you. If you feel unstable about that, where you feel like there's a threat of people taking it from you, you kind of get jammed here in this stage, right? You're needing to kind of make sure that everything is as stable as possible in your world and your experience of it first. Once those are met, those are your basic physiological things, right? Your basic survival stuff. Once those are met, we move up into the more social, psychological sides of things. So belongingness and love are the first thing. We need to find someone to love and be loved by. We need to be able to be connected with a group in some way, shape, or form. That group could be tiny. It might be you and a friend, right? But somebody or a group of people that accept you for who you are and that you love and that they love you back. Okay. If you feel lonely, if you feel separated, those things will basically make you not be able to get past this point. Interestingly, they've actually found that people who feel lonely for like chronic loneliness, where you're lonely for years at a time, it can be as detrimental to your health as smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Like the likelihood of dying younger is the same or equivalent to smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day on average, which is kind of nerve-wracking a little bit, given, especially in America today. Young adults typically have a lot of friends, like on average. I don't know about with COVID stuff, but before that, that was kind of the height of friendship. You had more friends during that time than any other time in life. But as we get closer to middle age, our friendships start to fade out. And in fact, for men, a lot of men don't actually have any close friends by the time they reach their early to mid 40s, which is part of the reason why men in that age group are one of the highest. There's the highest likelihood of committing suicide compared to any other group. They found there's a direct correlation and a likely causation, in fact, between loneliness in that age group and the likelihood of committing suicide. So yeah, make some friends, right? Takes effort, it takes work. And the thing is, the longer the friendship lasts, the more effort it technically takes, because you got to take the time to reach out and connect with them, right? And as life gets busy, it's easy to kind of let things fall out. But it's an important part of really becoming who we need to become. Okay. Once you find someone or a group of people who like you and you like them back, we move up into esteem needs. So esteem is kind of our idea of how we are viewed by others. We're looking at our achievements. We're looking at how competent we are at a given thing. We're looking at our ability to be independent. We also need to be recognized for the skills that we have, right? We'll have a higher sense of esteem if other people also praise or hold in high regard our skills. So there are going to be some skills that are going to be more naturally praised, right? Like if you're, I don't know, highly educated or like an engineer or something like that, right? You have a higher chance of getting more esteem, higher like with that. But at the same time, you can get esteem even from just basic stuff. As long as your community, other people around you, hold it in high regard, you can have a high sense of esteem. So you might be like a gamer and you're really good at it, and your friends know you're really good at it, and they hold you in high regard for that. That can actually technically get a level of meeting that need. So it's a way for us to get respect from our community. Generally, it would be connected to like working our way up the hierarchy, right? We're working our way up closer and closer to chief or whatever in that case, right? Once those needs are met, those social needs, we got someone to love, we have people that respect us for who we are and what we're capable of, we begin to move up into more individual, psychological, philosophical needs. So self-actualization needs is going to be the one that he initially stopped at. This is the need to live up to our fullest and unique potential. This is where we start to ask ourselves questions like, why am I here? What's my purpose in life? Like, what am I truly good at, right? And this is where we start to kind of dig deeper in understanding ourselves and kind of finding our place in the world. Okay. And initially that's where he stopped, right? He felt like that was kind of the epitome of where we ended. Toward the end of his life, he started to recognize that there was actually a sixth level, but very few people get to this level. This is that self-transcendence needs. It's a need to find meaning and identity beyond the self. And he felt like this is the point when you start getting amazing, like incredible individuals as far as in the eyes of the world. It's like Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, right? Like these people who they sacrifice a lot maybe on their individual life for the greater good of the community that they serve. And in some cases, they might even sacrifice those lower levels, right? They might end up with starvation. They might be in danger physically. People might hate or despise them because of what they say. But that they're willing to change their view of the need of that because of this ability to transcend the needs of the self for the needs of the greater world. You'll see them throughout history, right? These are usually the individuals who really, truly make history. And they stand out compared to the pack, right? There's been billions of people over the course of history, and there's a handful of people that basically have made it into the history books. Those generally are either because they're terrible people or because they've reached this level of complexity. So yeah, it's not like, oh good, I've met the first man, therefore I move into the second one either. Like at any point you could actually move up or down this ladder. You might find yourself, you're working up, maybe you're starting to do self-actualization and kind of figuring out what it is you're good at, and you lose your job or your house burns down or something like that. And all of a sudden, you're back down there in those bottom levels of the pyramid. On the other hand, maybe you've gotten your basic needs met, and all of a sudden you're like, man, I got friends, and I quickly have esteem, and boom, I'm up here and I'm working on the top. And so you can kind of move up them fast, you can drop down them fast, and it's not going to be a guarantee that you just stay there once you get there. Even the self-transcendence level, you can find yourself falling down that ladder, even if you reach that top stage. Although reaching that top stage seems to be the point when you're more likely to remain there because of the self-actualization has been kind of fulfilled or succeeded. You understand what your purpose is and what it is you're good at, and it alters your view of the lower stages. So, okay. So yeah, Maslow, he's an interesting guy. Let's see, slide 8, basic motivational concepts, affiliation and achievement, part 7. You can find the image that they have here on page, I think it's in the book. Thought it was in the book. Maybe it's not in the book. Let me go back. It is not in the book. So you can find this in the PowerPoint. Basically, it shows you like this is the basic sequence of the drive factor. Actually, let me look back. It might come back. Yes, never mind. You can find it on page 349. So flip back if you're in the Maslow section. This is looking at the drives and incentive side of things. So you have a need, which would be like food, water, right? You get thirsty, you get hungry. The drive is going to be the experience of hunger or thirst. And then the drive-reducing behavior is to go find food to eat and or something to drink. Not sure why they didn't put that one in the other one, but there you go. Okay, slide 9. Basic motivational concepts, affiliation and achievement, part 8. The need to belong or affiliation need. This is kind of connected to Maslow to some extent, but it's central human motivation to build relationships and feel part of a group. We are social creatures. And this has been, we've recognized this, I think I talked about this before, but we've recognized this for thousands of years, literally. Like there's people writing from over 2,000 years ago who talk about this idea that we are social beings. And there's a good reason for it, right? If you're part of a group, even if it's a small group, you have a much higher chance of survival. We are dealing with Ice Age hardware in a modern world. Ice Age hardware, hunter-gatherer mentality. Being part of the group gives you a much higher chance of making it, right? If there's 4 of you hunting, you have a much higher chance of getting some food. Granted, you have to share it between the 4 of you, but 4 people hunting is going to be a lot better chance of getting food in you than if you're by yourself. Also, if you get hurt or sick, you got people to help take care of you. And also, if they get hurt or sick, you can help take care of them, all those kinds of things, right? So it enhances the likelihood of survival. It actually, in fact, colors our thoughts and emotions. If you feel blue, you actually experience or perceive the world a little bit differently, which is why we actually have a lot of times, like if you're, red with anger and all those kinds of things, there are in fact connections, literal connections to how we perceive the world given those factors. It's directly related to health, performance, and self-esteem. Again, if you have a place in the group and it's established and people respect you and things like that, all of those things are going to improve. If, on the other hand, you find yourself at the bottom of the barrel, no one, you're struggling and you can't find those people that define your part of your group, the stress levels, the cortisol levels and things will accelerate significantly in this area. So towards loneliness and social isolation, again, we need people. So yeah. Self-determination theory, you can find this on, I don't know. There's no image. It's still on the same slide as slide 9. I don't know. Anyway, good way to touch these. So competence, autonomy, and relatedness are going to be basically the connection points here. Oh, there we go. There we go. Down on the page, bottom of page 352, you're going to find that area. It's this idea that we're motivated to satisfy our needs for competence, autonomy, and relatedness. Essentially, we're looking for skills that we can share with the group. We're looking for a place as an individual within the group, and then the connection with others. Generally speaking, we're gonna, like, if you look at even like a family, right? If you have more than one sibling, or if you have a sibling, so if you have at least 2 people, 2 siblings, oftentimes they're actually going to kind of do this naturally. One will excel at something, like let's say the firstborn is exceptionally good at, I don't know, sports or something like that. Oftentimes the secondborn will do one of 2 things. They'll either strive to compete directly, where they try to outdo the firstborn, or they'll find mastery in a different area, something that's a different route. So maybe this person's exceptionally good at like football, but this person's like, I don't want, they don't want to compete directly, so they end up going for basketball or baseball or something like that. So yeah, that's going to be kind of the idea there, is that we to some extent determine what it is that we end up going for, but connected to into this area. Okay. Hope that makes sense. That was a little bit wishy-washy. I'm sorry. But anyway, read that section on page 352 to 353, and that'll hopefully will clarify that a little bit. I don't know why that didn't seem like it came out very well. But slide 10, basic motivational concepts, affiliation and achievement, part 9, being shut out. Ostracism or social exclusion threatens the need to belong and causes literal pain. They've actually found that when a person is rejected by a group, let's say I'm trying to get into a group and they cut me out basically from it in some way, shape, or form, my brain will fire up the same way as if someone was physically hurting me. So social media ostracism causes similar pain. If something happens and you get shunned on Facebook or Instagram or something, you'll experience the same kind of a feeling as if you kind of got shut out in real life. Right, which pain focuses and motivates corrective action. So the idea here is that it hopefully would motivate you to change something that maybe is the reason why you have been rejected, right? So it might be certain behaviors that you do, might be certain practices or things like that. But basically the idea here is that, you do something that the group doesn't like, so they throw you out, you change that aspect, and then they let you back in. So there's positive and negative remedies in how to do this. You can either add something to yourself. Maybe you didn't get in to a group because you don't have the proper skills, and so you got to work on those skills. or maybe you didn't get into the group because you're kind of a jerk, and so you got to figure out how to like kind of tone down the jerkness side of things, right? But in any case, that pain hopefully is a motivator. Generally speaking, in humans, if you experience pain, it's motivating you to do something, right? You get cut, it's motivating, and it hurts. It motivates you to get away from the thing that's cutting you. You get burned, same kind of a thing, right? Mental or emotional pain is generally trying to help you change. It's uncomfortable in order to try to basically make you change your actions or choices or characteristics, things like that, to achieve that. Now, if they don't like you because something like your nose is too big or something like that, that's just dumb. Go find a different group. But yeah, that's going to be, if it's because of those other factors, character flaw or something like that is challenging. That should give you the motivation to hopefully change that up. Okay. Random fact number 3. Animal Planet aired 2 fake documentaries that proved, right, not really, but proved in fake documentary that mermaids exist. So many people actually believed it, though, that the U.S. government had to put out an official statement saying that they were fake and that it doesn't actually exist. So be careful what you think, right? Like sometimes things can be very impressive. So yeah, Animal Planet put out a thing on mermaids. Right, there you go. 11, Basic Motivational Concepts, Affiliation and Achievement, Part 10. Mobile networks and social media provide information and supportive connections among friends and family, right? It allows you to stay connected to some extent. So, social media really is one of those things that it's a double-edged sword. So it allows you to get that feeling of connection. With that feeling of connection, it basically activates reward centers in the brain for like dopamine and things like that. So you get a little boop perk on that, which is why you can get obsessed with it potentially. In today's world, it technically can function as a matchmaker. In America today, 1 out of 3 marriages start online. Like the relationship started online. So that it offers an opportunity for finding people. Predicts longer life when used in moderation, right? But again, double-edged sword. When used in moderation, it can be actually a really useful and handy tool. If it begins to kind of rule your life, they found that there's a correlation with that and like depression, anxiety, and different issues. It enables comparisons that can create envy and depression, which that's the problem. And then it also has a tendency of supporting narcissistic tendencies. We have seen narcissism on the rise. Narcissism is where you basically are overly obsessed with yourself to the exclusion of others. And since social media has become a thing, since the early 2000s basically, we have seen narcissism rise significantly in the population. And it can become a psychological disorder where, in fact, you might need counseling or therapy to kind of help overcome it, or at least get it back in check. So yeah, if you have a lot of people have a tendency towards it, but typically, traditionally, society wouldn't allow it to really do much with it. Today, we have all these tools that basically just feeds it and makes it even more extreme. So be aware of that. Use social media educated, if you will. Like make sure you understand what it's doing to you and how it's doing it. 12, Basic Motivational Concepts, Affiliation and Achievement, Part 11, Strategies for Maintaining Balance and Focus. So some things you're going to want to do. If you find yourself starting to get overwhelmed by things, right? Or if you are obsessing about certain things. Let's say, you're on your phone and you're like looking at Instagram or whatever all the time, or YouTube or Facebook or whatever. It's time to kind of start putting some boundaries on it, essentially. So you're going to monitor your time. See how much time you actually are legitimately spending on it. What's cool with today's phones, if you're using your phone a lot, you can see how many hours you're spending on it per day and or per week. And you can also see where you're spending that time. Monitor your feelings while you're doing a given thing, right? Are you looking at Instagram? Does it make you feel happy? Does it make you feel stressed? Does it make you feel angry or sad? And really get a feel for like kind of keep checking back in on your feelings while you're doing these things. Hide from incessantly posting online friends when necessary, right? If people are just posting every single moment of every single day, generally that's not actually a good thing. You might block them. You don't necessarily have to like unfriend them, but you might want to look at blocking them so that way you're not just getting their feed all the time. Check phone and email less often when studying. In fact, if you can turn your phone off, if you can safely do that, I would highly recommend doing that. Reduce those distractions. And then refocus and take a nature walk. They found that getting outside, even if it's just in a backyard, like you have like a tree or some grass and things, getting outside and moving has significant improvement on overall functioning for most people. In fact, for all people. They've done lots of studies on this, and basically everybody benefits from it in some way. Some people benefit from it more, but everyone benefits from it to some level. So yeah, get outside, do some moving, disconnect from electronics if you find yourself getting overwhelmed. It can also be a way of kind of pulling back the dopamine and serotonin levels. Those are basically what are getting filled slowly, just enough to keep you there, basically, without actually giving you enough to really give you that real boost that like exercise, like even a walk or something like that will give you. So get outside. Slide 13, basic motivation concepts, affiliation, achievement, part 12. Achievement motivation. It's going to be desire for significant accomplishment, for mastery of skills or ideas, for control, or for attaining a high standard. So we're going to basically be striving, we're going to be motivated for reaching a certain level of achievement, right? High motivation achievers are going to usually accomplish more. They're generally going to have greater financial success. Generally, they're going to have healthier social relationships and emotional well-being, right? They are motivated to get out and actually do things, which allows them to connect more and allows them to accomplish more in the long run. They demonstrate persistence, self-discipline, grit, and intrinsic motivation. So intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. I honestly can't remember if we talked about this before, but I'm going to go ahead and touch it on now. So intrinsic motivation are going to be the things that are intrinsically, internally. Okay, think introvert versus extrovert. So you have intrinsic and extrinsic. Okay. Intrinsic motivation are things that we do because we want to do them, right? A really good example of this would be like a hobby. It's something that you might pour money into. Right? I'm a camper. I did it for a living for a little bit as a guide, but in all honesty, I've spent a lot more money on camping stuff over the years than I probably ever made on it. And I love it. I am intrinsically motivated to get out into the woods on a regular basis. It does a lot of really good things for me mentally, as well as just getting out and moving and all those kinds of things. And so I'm willing to spend money on it, even though it's not technically making me any money, extrinsically. Okay. Extrinsic motivators are going to be that, the carrot at hanging just in front of you that kind of keeps you moving, right? So maybe an extrinsic motivation would be like, very good, you get a cookie kind of a thing would be an extrinsic motivator. I think we talked about this when we looked at conditioning aspects. But anyway, just a reminder on that. So with this one, what they found is that people who are highly motivated oftentimes are intrinsically motivated rather than just extrinsically motivated. When it comes down to it, if you don't have intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation will only get you so far, right? And I know this because I worked in jobs in the past where I was not intrinsically motivated to do them. I was extrinsically motivated, paid good or whatever. And so I stuck with it for a time. But after a while, it starts to burn you out. You need intrinsic motivation to do well. Extrinsic motivation can be a benefit if it's areas that you need to get it done in order to achieve something, but you just don't really want to do it. The extrinsic motivators might be that tool that we can use to boost us into that. Okay, but yeah. Okay, final random fact. Every second, the human eye moves about 50 times. Like darting around, right? So, human eyes, there you go. 14, basic motivational concepts, affiliation, achievement, part of 13, research-based strategies for achieving goals. So if you are trying to get motivation to get things done, here are some basically proven ways of doing so. Set concrete goals. Now, these can be big, right? It could be like, I want to be a millionaire or something like that, but make it something like achievable to some extent, right? That might be difficult to achieve, but it technically is achievable. But make it something where it's actually, it's not just like something vague, like, I want to be happier. Well, what does that mean, right? Maybe instead of saying I want to be happier, maybe it's I want to spend more time with friends or with family or something like that. That's something that's more concrete and more measurable. I want to spend 3 hours with my friends on a weekly basis or something like that. Okay. Don't leave it all wishy-washy up in the air. I want a good job. Well, what does that mean? Like, what kind of job do you want, right? Besides just a good one. Like, are you wanting to become a medical field? Or are you wanting to become a construction worker? Or are you wanting to be a teacher, right? There's lots of possibilities there. So pin it down. Make it something that's actually definable. Share your goals with friends and family. I've heard people say that you shouldn't do this. That is completely wrong from what the research has found. I've heard people say, like, if you tell someone about it, you'll never do it. It's actually the opposite. What they found is that people who tell their goals to other people feel more accountable to trying to do it. So you're more likely to strive to do it if you know someone out there knows that you're technically trying to do it. And that could be anything from, gaining something, like I'm going to write a book or something like that, to trying to quit something, like if you're trying to quit smoking or whatever. Telling someone that you're in the process of doing that can really benefit you. Develop and implementation of a plan. So here's your goal, up here at the top, right? I want to make $1 million by the time I'm 35, whatever. I missed that one, but anyway, if that was my goal, I failed. But if that's your goal, then you need to figure out how to get from where you are currently to that spot, right? So making some additional steps along the way, additional maybe smaller goals that will be progressing you towards that given bigger goal. That's what the plan generally is, right? So it's good to have a short game, a medium game, and a long game. Short game being like next month, medium game next 6 months to a year, long game year plus. And then have steps that you're going to be looking at so you can kind of be figuring out. They're kind of like those mileposts, right? Am I making progress toward what I'm wanting, and am I doing it on schedule? So yeah, with that, create short-term rewards that support long-term goals. Gamify it, right? Take a lesson from games. You do something in a game. Initially, when you first get the dumb game, they just flood you with all kinds of prizes, right? Angry Birds, for example. Initially, you pull back the little thing and let the bird go, and you're like 3 stars, woo! As you go, it gets harder and harder and harder. More difficult to get those 3 stars. You might get those 3 stars less and less often. But initially, you were getting rewarded because you were making it on the path very easily, and that's what gets you hooked. Do the same thing to your life, right? Initially, if this is brand new to you, or you're just beginning your path toward whatever your goal is, make those rewards kind of fast and furious to some extent. They don't have to be very big, right? Figure out something that actually you find rewarding and implement that. And the longer you go, you can make those rewards go longer and longer in between, to some extent, right? There might be a point where you're like, it's too long in between, you lose motivation. So this is where you're using extrinsic motivators to keep you intrinsically motivated, essentially. So yeah, that should be building you towards your long-term goal. Monitor and record progress legitimately, right? I'd recommend writing this down somewhere. And that way you can actually see, are you progressing towards what your goal is? You can see it as you go. For most people, that'll be a benefit. We generally are going to be optimistic if you're like, I'm doing pretty good. But if you're not really paying attention to what you're doing, let's say you're trying to lose weight. So you're like, I'm doing pretty good, it seems like, right? Like I'm only eating these things, but then you actually stop and look about it. Like if you do like a food diary, for example, you look back and like, man, I ate a lot more than I thought I did. Or maybe I didn't eat as much as I should have, or whatever. So it's a good idea to come up with some kind of strategy to kind of how to monitor your process. Create a supportive environment. If you can, surround yourself with people that are going to help you along the way. If you don't have people to help you along the way, maybe kind of look at removing them from your life, right? If they're all negative around you, that might be something. If you're trying to change a habit, take away those cues that will generally trigger you into those habits, right? If you're trying to quit smoking, get rid of your lighters, right? Get rid of matches. I wouldn't recommend totally getting rid of fire starting things at all, but at the same time, or at least making them hard to get to. It's usually a good idea to have some way of starting a fire just in case. But yeah, remove the trigger points. If you're trying to lose food, or if you're trying to lose your weight, remove the foods that you are tempted to eat all the time, right? If all you got is healthy food that's relatively low calorie, that's likely what you're going to eat, rather than if you have like, bags and bags of Oreos or something around, or Twinkies or whatever. I used to love Twinkies, but anyway, I don't anymore. I tried one, but things have changed, I guess. At least my taste buds have changed. Transform difficult behavior into habit. If it's something that you just struggle with, right, make it a habit. Simple example. Okay, if you're wanting to floss your teeth every day, let's say it's amazing to me how many people hate flossing their teeth, including me. I used to hate flossing my teeth. Don't know why. Just didn't like it. Takes a little extra time. It seemed frustrating. Didn't like it. Make it a habit, right? I have now gotten to the point where I don't even think about it and I floss my teeth. Initially, you're going to have to think of a way to basically, that might end up being its own little goal, right? But make it small, make the goal small. If I want to learn to floss my teeth, you could say, I'm going to floss my teeth like one tooth. If I floss one tooth, I can get my reward. And so as long as I floss that one tooth, I can get a reward. If I floss one tooth, though, there's a pretty darn good chance that I'm going to go ahead and floss the rest of them, or at least most of them, because I'm already there. I'm already flossing them. Why not just finish it up, right? It takes a whole 30 seconds more or whatever. And I get my reward, and it keeps me going. And then pretty soon I don't need the reward anymore because I don't even think about it. When I brush my teeth, I floss before I brush my teeth every day. And that's just the normal rhythm of it, right, for me now. So you can use habit as a positive. You can also use habit as a negative. And so if you can swap things in some cases. If you're trying to get rid of a habit, sometimes replacing it with a different habit can actually be the way to do that. But replace it with a good one rather than a negative one. Okay, that is that. So we're going to call that one a day. Make sure you read the chapter to get that information. Again, get it more into your head. But hopefully this helps kind of with processing that information. Don't forget to do the quizzes. And I will see you all in the next module, which is module 30, where we look at hunger. That should be a relatively small one. But anyway, look at hunger and how it motivates us to do what we're doing. So I will see you all in the next video. Until then, have a great day, night, evening, morning, whatever, and I'll see you there. Bye.